Okay, that's fine. So I'm just going to hand over now to Lorraine. Anthony's going to share the screens with a different bunch of slides, and Lorraine's going to introduce what we're going to be doing today.
Okay, so today we're just going to come together and we're going to look at how the borough, we work with the local authority to co-design the services that residents receive in the borough or need in the borough. So we're trying to work collaboratively together to design services through the eyes of the resident, how they feel about what they need, and how we work with how we work with residents to unpick all those little issues, and then what do we do with them. So for an example, someone could come to you and they, from our point of view, it might be that they're a carer caring for a relative, and then we find out there's some issues around their caring role, but then there's so many other things that are going on for them at the same time, like maybe debt, housing issues. And it's about how easy is it for us then to pick up the phone, or for them to pick up the phone and talk to somebody in housing to get advice, to find out, you know, good information of how they can take things forward to and get a positive result at the end of all of that. And it's about how we all work together as well, because we all have our own projects, our own charities do different things, but then so many people's issues go across charities, and it's how we signpost and talk to each other, how we work with the local authority to be able to do that as well. And basically, we're going to look in the groups at the key, like we've already set our key principles, but there's going to be some key issues that we're looking at today and over the next 6 months, and that's keep safe, have residents keep safe, have access to jobs, live well, digitally become, you know, so that they're digitally included. And I think that during lockdown and COVID, we've realised there's a lot of people that are not digitally included. And then you've got financial connections as well, how we facilitate connections across all the sector of voluntary sector, charities, the local authority, and also how we reduce debt. So I'm going to hand you over to Mark now, and he's going to tell you a little bit more of what we're going to be doing.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mark Fowler, Director of Community Solutions at the Council, and let me first apologise. I'm not great with Zoom, and so you're on my eye, back room mantelpiece at the moment, so this isn't the most conducive, but hopefully you can hear what I'm saying. If we can move on to the next slide. So I think, yeah, what Lorraine's really helpfully set out there in that slide we just had was the reliance. The reason that's set up as a Venn diagram is because of the way those aspects we're talking about, being isolated, keeping safe, reducing debt, work-balance, really link from one to another. When you're working with people and they've got issues, you know, the people you're on this call today very much know it's not one issue in isolation. So there's something there about how we think about those things a bit more collectively through the passages of the work, and how we look to co-design working together. And the bit I wanted to talk about here is the 3 ways that we feel we can work together. And these are quite simplistic, I suppose, from that perspective. And it sounds easy, doesn't it? But these are things we've probably been labouring with for a period of time. So the first one there is easy access to information, which actually that feels like that should just be a given. But when you've got many different organisations working with many different people offering different levels of support, actually navigating that's incredibly difficult. So there's a real opportunity for us to simplify this and come together and actually solve that problem. Working together to co-plan and produce solutions, yeah, actually this is really about how we rely on each other. You know, one of the points I want to get across, I think we need to recognise today, is the absolute dependency we all have on each other. And by working alongside and working together, we can really start to crack and move some of these big issues forward and actually get a sense of learning and what we can do collectively as we take some next big steps with it. And then strengthening cross-sector working and relationships. And that's just that if we can get those other 2 bits right, I think that's going to naturally happen. But there are some real opportunities in the skills in the various groups that we've got on the call today about how we can train together, we can learn together, we can share experiences, and again, we can work alongside. And from that, we'll get some very strong relationships. So I think that takes us on to one more slide from me. I'm saying that. So this is sort of like, this just sets out actually what we think is the need for us all to come together and the opportunity of us all working alongside. And it's organic, some of these things. Let's start with some simple things. Let's start building those relationships. Let's start training, working together. But let's think about some of those big issues that we're trying to crack. And that will be the body of the work we get into in some of the breakout and workshops today. So I think that leads me to just hand over to, is it Sally and Zara? And yeah, looking forward to the session today. Let's see what we can pull together, come out of it with some really tangible things we can take forward. And exciting times ahead, really. So I will shut up there and hand over to the important people.
That's fine, Mark. Just before, now it was going to be Jill and Sally, but Jill's having struggles logging on. So Wayne, I'm just going to put you in the spot.
I'm in.
Jill's in. That's good. Okay, so I'll hand over to Jill and Sally.
Thank you.
I'm glad you got here, Jill. I was trying to madly think what you were going to say then. Okay, so I'm Sally Dixon from Community Resources, and during lockdown we were involved with the BD Can initiative, delivering food parcels and prescriptions to residents who were shielding and didn't have a support network. And it was really fantastic to be involved. So we had lots of our volunteers out and about delivering parcels, but the really hard thing was walking away after you dropped off the parcel thinking, oh my goodness, that person is really isolated. So it was great to be able to meet a physical need, but it just felt like there was so much more. So we talked with the BD Can team about the idea of following up with a phone call just to see how people were doing, with a view to setting up ongoing befriending calls if that's what people would like. And quite a lot of people have come back to us saying yes, you know, not everybody by any means, but our team are doing about 80 calls a week at the moment to people. So, you know, there's obviously a real need there. We started with the localities that we were working in, and then Wayne and his team sent other localities so that we were able to kind of spread things out, really. And at the same time, it seemed like very sensible to bring together other groups who are doing something similar across the borough. And we've been meeting together on Teams every 2 weeks, so just to share what we're doing. And you know, different groups are doing different things in different ways, but it's the same aim. It's trying to connect people who would be otherwise isolated. And the thing that has been just so good has been meeting other people, finding out where other groups have got expertise that we don't have, and sharing some of our expertise with other groups. So it's been really, really excellent working together, because we don't all have the answers. As Mark was saying, we need each other. And I'm moving over to you now, Jill, if you're still there, hopefully.
Thank you. Thanks, Sally. Yeah, and I too have been attending the Connect meetings once every 2 weeks, and I found them just amazing. You know, I've learned so much from everybody, all of the contributors. You know, we've had ILA, we've had Harmony House, and some of our staff use these services for referring some of our residents to. Al Medina Mosque has been really amazing, the help that they've been able to offer the food banks across the borough. And all of the credit really goes to the BD Connect partners who've been able to come to the meetings and just let us know how wonderful services they can offer. Reconnections, community resources, befriending services, it's all been really, really positive experience for all our residents. So I think since the pandemic, there's been one single aim that has really helped the community organisations and faith groups in the council to take practical steps to work together. And it's been really amazing to see how everyone's come together to support our residents who were isolated and vulnerable. And I think it's working because we're able to come together and take very small practical steps together to reach our residents that have been most affected by the pandemic. And as you know, I work quite a lot with the extended adult intake team. And these are a group of people who, up until the end of March, were working in libraries and children's centres and had no knowledge really of the fantastic work that goes on in the community. Our staff were redeployed in April to start calling residents on the NHS shielding list. So there was an immediate sort of shift in priorities, and staff were given training and equipment to call our residents. And to date, we've made over 13,000 calls, which I think is really amazing. And from these calls, we were quickly able to refer residents to our BD CAN partners and other support services such as the Homes and Money Hub. And we're really grateful to all our new colleagues, Sally, Chrissy, Amanda from The Source, who logged into our team meetings and come in as a guest speaker and just shared their knowledge and expertise and the offer of help to our staff. So yeah, that's been a really positive addition to our new team, and I think the success has been through the building of relationships. And another example of working collectively, I hope that, you know, while we're looking forward, is our community volunteers. So we're, as we speak, putting together a new volunteer brochure that has got BD collective branding and opportunities in the community rather than just the opportunities that we have in LBBD. And we're currently working with The Source to recruit and induct enough volunteers to run the community supermarket that's planned for the BLC. So so far we've got 8 people signed up to it, and they're due to be doing their induction. And I think Better Impact as a software tool for managing our volunteers has really going to make that task a lot easier. So I think the future together is going to be really good. I think we've made some really good inroads into this. Sally, over to you.
Yeah, I think I'll come back now. So I think that's really helpful, and I think it gives just an idea of it. It's been interesting during the pandemic season that actually it's caused us to come together in a much more accelerated way than we were before. But some of these conversations started before the COVID crisis hit. And if we just move on to the next slide, Rodri and I are just going to take us through some of the thinking around what does it mean to have a borough response rather than a council response or a social section response? How do we work together in those things? So what we've committed to do together is to start to put into practice what it means to work in partnership. And we could sit around in meetings all day long talking about what that looks like. But actually, we're kind of thinking we're going to commit to do some things together and test it as we go and just learn what works best. So this will be over the next 6 months, just to kind of start to look, particularly in a few areas, and Rodri will just explain the areas in a minute. And it's actually just to take some time together as the people who are on the ground doing the work to work out what works best, I think as Lorraine said at the beginning, for residents, to give them easy access to the support they need, whatever that might be, and also for our workers within all sectors to know what other support is available beyond their own sphere. So Rodri, do you want to just take us through what that might look like over the next 6 months? Rodri?
Hi, thanks Avril. Hopefully you can see and hear me, and the connection issues are strong enough. Yeah, so very briefly, whilst of course I want this to continue to grow and collectively work and to do some of this organically, what we would like to begin discussing and shaping today is how we might bring together some steps to continue to build on some of the examples already spoken about over the next 6 months. And then in that context, thinking that across 3 themes or broad areas. So one being how we might best continue to work together to support our children, families and young people in accessing the support that they deserve at the right times in the right places, and thinking about how we connect together to do that in the best possible ways. The second area, again, drawing on feedback through COVID and earlier work a long time before COVID around rethinking what collectively our response to some of our more older, vulnerable adults looks like in terms of adult social care, and how we can shape our response to those people in those areas together. And the third area is around access to food. And we know that COVID has presented some real challenges for people in accessing food, and food being one of the key areas affecting people's lives through poverty on a daily basis. So great work already underway through the emerging food networks within the borough, and we're keen to explore and think about how that might grow and come together. So 3 thematic areas. Our approach that we're thinking through and would like to test out a little bit today and get collective input from everyone around how might this work best, is to bring together some of those networks through some working groups, with some meetings, maybe on a monthly basis, and then a sensible plan of action to bring your ideas, to continue building on things we've achieved so far together and taking that forwards. Avril, I'll stop there.
Thank you, Rodri. So, learning how we co-design services together, and this won't just be a one-off, as Rodri says, it'll be monthly meetings, but we want to start off that discussion today. So we're going to just get us into breakout groups, and if we just see that slide of what the question will be in the breakout groups. Okay, so what things need to be in place for this approach to be useful? So just let's have a little think together. You know, that there's some big changes have to happen here, and in other ways what we've seen during the COVID thing is actually quite small things can happen, and it can all work anyway. So what things do you think need to be in place for this approach to be useful? Anthony's going to put us into groups now, and you'll get a little button, a blue button, and if you press that, and if you just introduce yourselves, and within about 20 seconds, facilitator will be assigned to your group to join you, and they'll have some prompts to help with the discussion. Okay, and everyone jumps back in. Great. Okay, so let's, Cameron, can you kick us off? Now, what we're wanting, because obviously feedback is good when it's precise and specific, and hopefully that was a useful conversation. So we're just going to ask your facilitator to give us one key point that kind of came out in the discussion. So Cameron, if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, sure. So I think the overwhelming thing that I sort of pulled out of the conversation was the advantage of the BD CAN network was that there was a clear structure to where people could go to. So in terms of there wasn't a need for sort of multiple contact points and that sort of streamlined process. The flip side of that is that to some people it sort of felt like a one-way. They were sort of sending information up, and so in terms of what needs to be in place is that there needs to be a two-way path.
That's very helpful. Yeah, and it is interesting in these sense when yeah, that's a very useful thing in terms of knowing where to go and how to go. Ruth, do you want to go next?
Yeah. Yeah, so it was quite a good, helpful conversation. I think the main thing I would draw on is kind of the need to change the boundary of how to work together kind of with GDPR and everything like that, and how the example was used with social work, but rather than waiting until like a child and a family are in desperate need to actually have that early intervention, and for different organisations to be aware of that, but I think the boundary for that was kind of GDPR, how things are shared, roles, responsibilities, kind of time and capacity. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely that big issue of data.
Yeah,
is one we definitely have to be tackling together. Katie.
Yeah, so in our group, we kind of overwhelmingly spoke about the value of relationships and connections, but specifically we spoke about, so although there's been a suggestion about, you know, how can we come together kind of regularly, say every 2 weeks, and that this would be great for building relationships, but how could we have the platform or the means, like whether this is a bit of online technology or just having mobile numbers to hand of certain key people, to speak to the right people kind of in between and outside of these kind of formal meetings, a bit more kind of sporadically or ad hoc, kind of as a question comes up.
No, that makes a lot of sense, yes. And it's interesting, those things, it all kind of links in terms of that, all these different elements of that joined up approach is so vital. So that's really helpful, actually. Each of these is just slightly different. Zara?
Hi. So we've talked about how we, is it key to understand where to start and stop, to understand better the needs of the residents, and also beyond our remit. So when we know that the things to pass it on for more intervention. Consent also we discussed, very important. A couple of organizations said that they need organizations to know what they do, how beneficial they are for the residents, so that they can add in their consent forms. So that is also key to develop, and how we can stay close contact to each other. Again, formal, either network, but more like pick up the phone to whoever you need to get hold of. How can we make that more structured way? Tools and training that we can share and resources across the sectors are key as well. How are we going to do that? And so those are the key things we discussed. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. Sarah, can we come to you?
I had a bit of a technological malfunction. I got thrown out of the group right at the beginning. So luckily Wayne took over for me. So I'm really sorry I missed the entire discussion. I think Wayne, you took notes.
Let's go to Wayne. Sorry about that, Sarah.
No worries. I mean, I think to add to what other people have said, we talked a bit about how the recent season has been more levelling. So, you know, it's not been the town hall and people in shirts and ties and that sort of stuff, but people working more on energy and common purpose and being much more on an open invite basis. And so how can we carry that on? You know, how can we, if people are interested, have a little bit of interest, how can we work with that?
Keep working in our living rooms, huh? Hearing things. Hazel, can we come to you?
I think I'm not sure if there was something going wrong in terms of who we got split up with, but Zara was the lead in our group.
Oh, okay, that's right. Yeah.
Echo everything she said.
Okay,
Lorraine and Jill's groups, the groups that Lorraine and Jill were in, remain.
Lorraine, Jill. Who was the other two groups? There should be another two groups.
Yeah, the ones that Lorraine was in and the group that Jill was in.
Okay, so the Lorraine and Jill, I don't know who your facilitators were, but someone either come forward or one of you two. Who was your facilitators?
So we have a facilitator.
I don't think we had one, did we?
No, we didn't have one. So what we did was all muck in.
All right, well, one of you tell us then. Give us your feedback, Lorraine.
Okay. Well, we discussed quite a lot actually, and what we felt is that it is important to have the communications across the board with each other, but we also looked at how we communicate with local authority as well, and we saw clearly that they were the gatekeepers of services sometimes for the issues that we're trying to deal with residents, and sometimes it's a little bit difficult to be able to have those kind of conversations where you can just pick up the phone and talk to somebody and get some clear advice, so that you know that you're making the right, you're providing the right information to the resident for them to develop a bit of resilience and control and be able to take things forward themselves. And we felt that's lacking really, and that was something that we also felt was a bit of an issue. Streamlining the process as well. Some people was talking about that. It should be clear and it should be straightforward for residents, so they kind of understand, you know, where to go. And you know, for some people that can, it's still quite difficult. It's still a maze. Yeah, those were the sorts of things. I mean, there was also mention of like a newsletter. Well, I know that used to happen years ago. People used to get newsletters, and I can't see that's happening going forward. But a community hub, maybe, that we filter in loads of information, where the charity, you know, we can all put our information in one place. And you've got Barking Library and you've got Dagenham Library and other hubs where people haven't got internet access or computers, they could actually go into them. It was just an idea, a bit of a throwaway idea of how you could get resources in one place for people to get onto that and access.
Well, that's really helpful, Lorraine, because that kind of takes us on to our next discussion point, because that's a good starting point. So what we're going to look at now is building on what we already have. And Anthony, if you can just get that next slide up for us, please, before we... So one of the things we want to start to kind of consider together is what things can we build on? What's already here that we can build on? What has worked well? And then what might it look like? And I think we've covered a lot of these things. You've identified basically a lot of these things that are already in place as the things that need to be in place for us to kind of move forward. And I think we're looking at what would it look like to share training and knowledge, the buddying and shadowing together. And so I think all of these things are just kind of like starters for 10 for us to consider. But Rodri, do you want to add anything to that before we go back into groups?
No, I think that's right, Deborah. Agree, and already it felt like in my group and across the others from the feedback, there's a huge amount of energy there and some great things already happening. I think one of the things that's great from the groups is a sense of what some of that might look like over the next 3-6 months. So, for example, when we talk about buddying, well, who might that be from your organisation and with whom and when? Beginning to get those starters for 10 down and out in our...
What good things are already happening that we can build on, and what other practical ideas?
Organisation and with whom? Those things coming together really give us the room.
Oh, Rodri, sorry, you're coming and going a wee bit. And what other practical ideas can we take to the working groups? So the next stage that we're going to move on to, as we said before, is going to start to invite you into working groups, and you can choose if you want to be part of those over the next 6 months. But let's just take a minute just now to have a look at both those questions. Okay, I hope that was useful. I think it is helpful again just to hear from each of the groups. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you either to give me question 1 or question 2, and just 1 point, and then we'll just kind of sum up because we want to stay to time. So if I can go to Hazel's first of all. Hazel, can you tell us what are the good things we're building on?
I'm just going to make clear it was very much led by Jill, so I've made notes though. So in terms of the sort of what can we build on, the good things already happening, there was a really lovely quote from Stefan saying the development of BD Can and the movement forwards in terms of everyone coming together and starting to work differently was like system development on steroids. And there was some really lovely feedback coming through around the fact that social care easements weren't necessarily required because of the good work coming through the BD Can and our voluntary sector and community organisations, and that connection that's coming forwards as a result of some of the work, and this real appetite and commitment to go, right, okay, what's next? What are we going to do over the next 12 to 18 months to kind of build on this and cement it into business as usual? And it came through really, really strong. So I think that's the strongest bit that we need to share from our group.
No, thank you, Hazel. Yeah, definitely. Cameron, let's hear from you on any practical suggestions. Just if you can just give us one.
Yeah, so one of the things that was talked about was just in terms of what needs to be in place to ensure that people, whether it's volunteers or individuals who are actually sort of doing a lot of frontline service, what needs to be in place so that their voices are able to be heard in the working group, so it doesn't just become a case of who's able to who's able to give up time, like what can be done about that.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And Rahat's group, if you tell us again any good things to build on.
So we, Lorraine, I think Lorraine, you took some notes, but we had some really, really good discussions. And what we felt was to have a portal that we would have everybody's details on and how we can connect to those people, but how we maintain that portal. But thing behind the portal was the relationships, because it's the relationships that really make things work, and knowing the people, but also knowing that different groups of people work differently with other people, whether it's around culture, background, or language, and so on. So just having the name is not enough. And what we felt is that we're quite different to other boroughs, because we're not just, this is the organisation, this is their contact details. We're very much about the people behind the organisations, because the way we look at residents, they're people, we're people, and how we connect is built through relationship, which is more than just the name.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. Relationship is vital. Sarah, any practical ideas that came out of your group? Just if you can just give us one key one.
Well, we sort of ran out of time, which was a shame, because there were so many wonderful people in the group with so much to share. And I think our key point that came out was, how do we share knowledge across the partnership? The sort of range of skills, the experience, the expertise, and some of the fantastic work that's been happening. How can we share those skills as we move forward, whether that's through formal training or other ways of just getting people involved and sharing their knowledge? So that was our kind of key point. How can we build on that and share knowledge?
No, that's helpful. Now, I don't know who the facilitator in Wayne's group was, but if they could step forward.
I took a few notes. I think Terry raised an interesting point about how, in his experience, we're quite good at getting the ball rolling. We're perhaps sometimes not always as good as keeping the ball rolling. And the sort of ideas we had around that were continue the dialogue, continue the discussions, creating space for that is important. We also had a conversation about how virtual meetings allows a lot more people to participate on their terms. So not always going, say, to the town hall, which can be quite a barrier in the past. And that seems to be sustaining quite well, although we have to have a nod to those people who might struggle with tech or and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you. And whoever's the facilitator from Sally's group.
Was this the practical idea?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So some way of helping particularly older people know that they can trust us. So as more volunteers get involved and more community organisations, how do we keep the message that people need to be careful, but also that we can be trusted? So some way of kind of giving us some kind of, not official, but some kind of, we're here and we're okay.
Okay, no, that makes sense, yeah. And Zara, finally.
Yes, very useful contributions all around. We've talked about how we communicated well in different ways. So WhatsApp group was created with the BD can, that was quite useful. Where emails you wait for a few days, it was really quite quick response. So the whole communication, we did it well, and that has to be built on. How adaptable we were. So we came together and we just adapted what is needed. Again, how we can sustain that was really good ways of moving forward. Also shadowing, it's been suggested, how can we shadow one another so that we can build the relationship that we need across services. Elaine from Collaborate mentioned about randomized cafe. So where you actually match people who wouldn't normally meet, they could meet and have an hour for coffee and talk about their services or their perspectives. I think that's maybe a way to come closer to each other. So in a social way, relaxed and environment, but exchange learning, exchange different services, and so information. That was quite useful. Also, other things that we've done through the crisis and beyond, schools groups were a really good group to go to. So where all the schools came together to create spaces are very important with all the networks. But networks also work, but also social meetings might work as well.
Yeah.
So all in all, what those points: adaptability, communication in different ways, shadowing, and meeting for coffee. So brilliant. Yeah.
Sums that up very well, I think, really, doesn't it? One of the things we just want to ask you to do, so we're going to ask Mark Fowler, Director of Community Solutions, and Zara, Chief Executive, Excel Women's Centre, to come back to just give us their closing remarks. But before we do that, can you just pop into the chat, having discussed what you've discussed, having kind of given a sense of, well, we are going to be walking together more closely and in a different way as we move forward. What would be the thing that you would do differently if we were starting this tomorrow? So just doesn't need to be a paragraph, it can just be a sentence. What has this left you with today to make you think, yeah, this is what I can do differently moving forward? And if you just put your thoughts into the chat, and I'm going to ask Zara to come first, and then if Mark concludes our session. Yeah? Zara's just going to give us the next steps.
Thank you, Avril. So really, it was good sessions from all the conversations that I've listened this afternoon, and it is really kind of shows how we have appetite to work together and how we ready to challenge ourselves in order to better the borough and its residents. So really quite good all around. In the next steps, we will let you know in different work streams, care, families, and more contextual work around safeguarding. So there will be more work coming. Some dates will be shared, and ways that we can connect perhaps the networks as well, but more structured work streams will be shared. About how we can do things differently, how we can challenge a bit ourselves in terms of building the good works that happened. And I think is everybody acknowledge how we really kind of a components of things to happen. All of us is a missing piece to come together and get things done for the benefit of the residents. So we're in a good place. Well done, everybody. And thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Now, I can't see Mark on the call.
I'm here. Sorry.
Oh, you're here. You're good. Okay, good.
I'm still trying to get used to the technology, so apologies. I just wanted to add, sort of like picking up on the point of thank you. I mean, it's been a really powerful conversation today with some excellent feedback. And what is apparent is that we're building on some really, really strong foundations, and we've got a really special group of people coming together as well. So I think there's a huge opportunity here for us in how we come together collectively and we move forward. And I make that point around actually sort of how we rely on each other. I think it's really quite essential. And one of the groups I was in, Wayne made a reference of actually sort of like a bit of a leveller in not being in the town hall. People, I know it sounds like an obvious thing, but actually we are all in this together. We all have an equal amount of responsibility. But equally, there's an opportunity for all of us. So I think it's just how we navigate some of those things. And what I'm really interested to see is what we take out of today and what we can do sort of moving forward that's tangible and we can start to work on, whilst we don't lose that organic co-design element of what we're talking about, which are absolutely fundamental and at the heart of what we're trying to do. So it's just thanking with everyone on this, and let's see what we can do, really.
No. Thank you, Mark. So if you haven't jotted something into the chat room, please do so. I think it's really, really interesting if you read through some of people's comments on what they're seeing. It's just quite fascinating. And so I think the key thing moving forward is we'll be sending out some dates and some information about the different working groups it's happening, as Sarah and Mark suggested. And otherwise, that's us for today. And really appreciate you all coming and giving your time to this. This does feel like quite a radical step forward for this borough. And it, without doubt, is going to be key for residents getting the support and services they need. So thank you very much, and let's keep talking, because that seems to be the way for things to really genuinely change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Afro.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks, Af.